Hello and welcome back. Today's guest is someone who was recommended to me when I was looking for guests on the podcast. And I checked out her content, and the thing that struck me most about it was just how genuine it was. Because in today's day and age, social media is just a front, and you see the best 10% of people's lives, and we're tricked into believing that their life is just that good all the time. But Mabel shares some real vulnerability, and I think helps give people a better feeling about themselves and a better understanding of what life is really like, particularly when you move abroad. So she's been based in Dubai for a long time and is now moving to Australia. And today she's going to share some insights on when it's okay to quit what you're doing and how quitting can actually be something that is good and can be as good as starting. She's going to share how living overseas can actually be quite lonely and how to deal with that as well, and some other insights as well from her years of living abroad. So really interesting episode, awesome person. I really hope you enjoy it. And please do leave a like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content, because that is what motivates me to keep going. Thanks so much. Thank you so much for coming on. You have quite an adventurous lifestyle compared to many at home. You have been living in Dubai for 6 years, is it?
Coming up to 7, actually. And I
Nice.
can't believe I'm saying that, but yeah.
But that's coming to an end, right?
Okay, I'll stop you there. I think I am nervous about committing to leaving Dubai. And part of the reason that I've kind of been a little bit vague on my own channels and on my own kind of YouTube about leaving is because I think I'm embracing the idea of not knowing, and I want to see where this year takes me, which much to everybody's, frustration, especially my family want to know what my plans are. But the truth is I don't have a plan right now.
I know that feeling all
Yeah.
too well. And sorry, family, but my family do as well, because I'm constantly
Yeah.
putting them through it. How are you feeling about the upcoming transition?
I'm feeling positive overall, very positive. And I think so my word of the year is surrender. And that really goes against my kind of recovering, like that really goes against my kind of perfectionist and control freak tendencies. I'm trying to kind of embrace not knowing, letting go the need to know and the need to have a plan. Whereas in the past, I've been someone that always has to have a plan. So I'm actually enjoying it. And I'm surprised at myself that I'm enjoying this kind of uncertain time. Yeah.
You have to try and enjoy it, right? Because if you're unhappy in uncertainty and you're going through it, then it can feel like the most turbulent part of your life.
Totally. And I've definitely been there, and I've been in a place where having anything uncertain or unfigured out has felt like my personal hell. But I think I'm actually really proud of how I'm not that person that needs that. And it's kind of that self-trust, actually, like knowing that I'll figure it out.
Yeah. One of my best friends said to me on a podcast actually fairly recently, he said, there is not one bit of your life that I would want. And he says it with love. He says it in a way that he doesn't necessarily think that my life is bad, but the constant uncertainty, the constant uprooting your life to move from one place to another, different business to another, and so on. It's a lot of people's idea of hell, right?
100%.
And for me, I struggle with monotony and the same thing for
Me too.
an extended period of time,
Yeah.
whether that's a place, a job, or anything else. So to me, his life is my idea of hell.
Yeah. I relate to that a lot, and I think that's kind of that thing of like, it's comparison, isn't it? And we're in this kind of world where we're constantly comparing what we're doing to other people, which really does suck any joy out of what you're doing. So I definitely relate to that. I think that another reason I'm kind of hesitant to say that I'm leaving Dubai is because I've tried to leave twice already and returned after a few months, and my friends say that they're not throwing me any more leaving parties.
Yeah.
So far I've had 3 now. The last one was on Friday, and they said they're not throwing me anymore.
We might as well leave then.
Yeah. So let's see. But yeah, I think that's also because I know myself, and I know that I always want to travel, and then once I've got it out of my system, I kind of want to go back, and I'm always on the go and flipping between here, there, and everywhere.
Have you thought about that much deeper to try and work out what it is inside you that causes this?
Actually, yes. And I have very recently been put onto the system of the Enneagram types. Are you familiar with it?
I'm not. Teach me.
Oh, okay. So this is my friend Jackie introduced this to me, and I was completely fascinated by it. Just because I've never felt so seen by the results page of a personality type test. So there's 9 personality types, and you do, I think it's 180 questions, so it does take a little bit of time, and it was put together by psychologists, and of the 9 personality types, I am a number 7, and the 7s are kind of motivated by a need for novelty, a need for new. Their core kind of fear in life is monotony and boredom, and they're extreme sufferers of FOMO, which I feel very, very seen by that, because I think that explains a lot of the kind of dashing about and wanting to try everything. So yeah, this is something that I've found recently that I found so interesting.
Is it something that you want, or do you wish that you were different?
Good question. I think I think, well, in fact, the kind of the basis of the Enneagram types is that you can be in a kind of healthy, stable type in your like number, or you can be in a kind of destructive path. And I think with anything like this, knowing more about yourself can help you make changes to your life that are gonna, support being on your growth path versus your destructive path. So when I am thinking about and reflecting about things that I consider, oh, that's so me, that's typical me, I think I'm reflecting on the actions that I've done so far, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I want to completely change everything about me. And I think at the moment, I'm just kind of like, I know myself, and I'm gathering data about myself, and I'll use that to make my decisions, especially now, because I think I'm in this real transitional time. So does that answer the question? Not really.
It does. And I think we can go a bit deeper on it as well. So I have a friend that messaged me the other day because I shared something someone wrote on a coffee cup, and they took quite a lot of time and effort to handwrite quite a long message for a coffee cup. And it was 2025 is the year that you become the person that you want to be. And he replied saying, "Ugh, I hate that." And I think for him, he's a gay person, and I immediately assumed that perhaps he had been through a journey of what he wanted to be and what he was didn't align, and he felt a lot happier once he just accepted what he was. And I said this to him, I was like, do you think that perhaps that background has something? And he was like, well, yeah, there were years where I thought, I would still dream about having a wife and kids. And that happened like 5 years after I came out. And I was like, okay, so maybe, because I can see that perspective as well, right? But then I can also see the perspective of, if you give in to what you want all the time, you're a slave to your brain, and you're going to be constantly making bad decisions. You need to have that voice of what you want, of who you want to be, to help steer you on the right path. Because if you just follow your intuitions, you're going to be fucked.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I think you would find the Enneagram test very interesting. Yeah. And I think in the same way that I've found it really interesting, it's kind of, once you have some more information about yourself, and there's a lot of different, theories about this kind of thing, but I think having more information about yourself, as you said, it can kind of detach the you from the mind that is doing all of this, typical Mabel behavior. I think being a little bit detached from that self is actually so liberating, because it can help you kind of see bigger picture, and exactly as you said, kind of make decisions based on what you actually want, and not based on comforting, or worse, based on fear and avoiding pain and avoiding FOMO, which is the kind of the fear of the 7, which is me. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I think I'll have a look at this test afterwards. But yeah, just elaborating on that point before is that I don't think the answer lies in one camp or the other. You can't just fully do what you want all the time. And also you can't deny yourself what you want all the time and just try to force yourself to be someone that you're not. I think there has to be levels of compromise, because we go on strike with ourselves. When we are told no by someone else, we have a natural grievance and want to do the opposite. And that happens when we tell ourselves no as well. So yeah, there's a happy line there. And obviously it's great for my friend on this particular instance that he then became comfortable with who he was, because what he wanted to want was something that he was never going to achieve. That would have meant living a lie his whole life. But there are small things, like if you want to be fit, and you start then forcing yourself to go to the gym a little bit, and then it snowballs, and then you become someone who habitually goes to the gym and trains, then what you want to want and what you want have now aligned. And that's the perfect scenario, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a happy medium, and both sides need to be considered on each one. There's no guidebook on that one.
True. That makes me think of faking it till you make it, in a way. It makes me think of acting as though you're already in that, I want this, even though you're not. Maybe you're not ready for that goal or that destination, but you're kind of pretending you are. I think a lot of people can relate to that. I relate to that a lot. Yeah.
So you obviously know your own personality type that gave you. What's the sort of spectrum of things that this test can tell you?
It's super interesting. I've sent it to nearly everyone I know, because once you get into it, and I know that my friends listening will be probably rolling their eyes listening if they hear me, chatting about this as well here. But I think the most fascinating part of it for me has been the understanding of the fears for each type. So the fear may be fear of not being good enough, fear of not feeling wanted or needed by those around you, fear of not being good or, kind of ethically good. So there's all these different fears. And I think, it's very difficult to understand what your fear is, especially, and it's hard to know what other people's fears are. It takes a lot of self-awareness, and a lot of people are avoiding, even telling themselves what they're deep down truly afraid of. And I think that's why I found it so interesting, because I think it just really hit me about my own fears and kind of tapped a nerve, really. So that's the part that I found most fascinating probably about all the types. And I think we can use that information to reflect and to think, are we acting in a way that is because of a fear?
That's something that I've encountered this last year as well.
Really?
With social media. My whole life, adult life and teenage life, I boycotted social media, and I denounced it as a waste of time. It was no good for anything. And I realized fairly recently that it was from a place of fear, because my initial experiences with social media had been bad. Have you heard of the concept of the inner citadel?
No.
Okay, so it's a place where we retreat to inside ourselves to try and avoid getting hurt. And it's like someone who's lost a leg then says that having 2 legs is stupid and no one wants them anyway, because it helps them escape the pain of being like, oh, okay, I wish I had a leg.
Okay.
And what I actually wanted was to be successful on social media, to connect with people, to have that, but I was too afraid to even try. So I didn't try at all. And I didn't get Instagram until about 2 to 3 years ago. Definitely one of the latecomers to the party. And it wasn't until I started digging into why that was that I realized that it started, as you say, from a place of fear.
That's interesting. I think it's and it's probably took quite a bit of a journey. It sounds like, obviously it can take years to uncover what these fears are and how these fears are subconsciously, dictating our actions and ultimately our lives. Yeah.
100%. And I think these tests that you do, I do kind of lump them in with other things like spirituality, and other things, because I think ultimately what they are is they are a way for humans to try and make sense of something that is so complicated that we can't work it out. And some people turn to God as an explanation. Some people turn to the month they were born and how that aligns with the stars and everything else. Others then look for a definitive guide of who they are as a person in the sense of these personality tests? Because there's loads of them. Like, have you done the Myers-Briggs?
I haven't actually, but this is something that a lot of my friends were comparing it to.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's, you know, it's got such similar like thought behind it. Yeah,
exactly. It'll categorize you. It'll say you are a commander.
Yes.
Or you are, I can't remember what the others are. I just
like mediator and achiever and things like that. Yeah,
exactly. And it helps people sort of make sense of why they are the way they are, right? Because we, as humans, we need a reason for everything.
We do, don't we? And it actually really does help. I think that is such an interesting point, actually, that these tests could be. You could call them a spiritual practice, because I think the common denominator is separating the mind from the self is such a spiritual practice. And I think having that awareness, and when I, you know, a few years ago for me, that kind of realization and starting to understand more about it. I think when one has that understanding, it is so comforting, because it does give a reason.
100%. The danger is it can then be an excuse for certain other behaviors, and that's something that a friend of mine that I had on, she was a great guest, Susie. She is a holistic health coach, and she's very into her spirituality. And I started the podcast by saying, I want to be transparent and honest. I am a skeptic. I don't believe in it. But I'm open to hearing other sides of the coin. Yeah. And also one of my childhood best friends, who's one of the most intelligent people I know, has now built a life with Susie. They have a house together and a kid. And he's saying, you know, I think there's something in this. Yeah. And so if someone else who I respect on an intellectual level is open to it, I was like, yeah, I should be too. Yeah. And one of the things she said to me on that is something that has stuck with me. It was so profound. And she said, you can take what helps you and leave the rest. And I think that is so valuable.
I love that.
I don't need to believe in the whole thing. I don't need to all of a sudden start using my star sign as a reason for why I do certain things. Yeah. But it's made me think, okay, maybe according to this, I have a tendency as a Gemini to be two-faced. That's a negative segment of it, right? And I have noticed that I've been frustrated with people over the last few months since that conversation, and wanted to say something negative about them when they weren't there. And it stopped me. And I just thought, you know, I've taken something from it, despite still not being converted. Apologies, because I know most of the people that listen to this are firmly in the believing in spirituality camp. Yeah. But I have found that there is value in that, and I can take something from it. And it sounds like you've done the same.
Yes, and that's actually extremely relevant. Yesterday, I had a Vedic astrology reading here in Bali. Right. So in Western astrology, I'm also Gemini, but in Vedic astrology, it comes from the ancient Vedas in India. And because of all the time that's passed, the planets have shifted. So in Vedic astrology, I'm a Leo. So I had this reading, and I think I was actually a little bit nervous to have it for some reason. And I think that's because, again, it's that control freak. I was like, hang on, I like to think that I do have free will, and that, you know, I'm not the way that I am just because of, you know, X, Y, Z. But I actually really enjoyed the experience. And I think taking from it what helps you is such a nice way to view it. And it doesn't need to be, you know, I think I'd consider myself not a skeptic, but not the other side either. I'd say I'm just exploring. I can enjoy it. I can enjoy reading my horoscope. I can enjoy doing things like personality type quiz and this kind of thing. But one thing that I have been kind of thinking, and this was only yesterday morning, but I got this reading, is, you know, and she laid out quite a detailed life plan for me, which I won't go into fully right now because I'd be here all day. But I thought, I felt a sense of relief, and I thought, how nice would it be if we all showed up in our lives knowing that everything turns out fine? How much more would we enjoy it? How much more would we just kind of let go of these fears of, you know, whatever it is we're worrying about, if we just knew that at the end, it's fine, it's okay, you know, it unravels the way it unravels, and it's okay. So it's a really interesting experience. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
What I took from that is that if I don't like my star sign, I can get a reading from a Vedic astrologer and change it.
True. So you might not even be a Gemini over in that camp. Yeah, I think there were some things that she said that I felt like weren't me. But then there was a lot of it that I felt like really was, and yeah, it was a really interesting experience.
I think that is the case for most people, that a lot of what's said aligns with them, and then they can dig into that deeper. And again, going back to Susie, take what helps you.
Yeah.
And leave the rest.
If I'm thinking about what helps me, I think I'm taking that. I'm going to try and take the knowledge that everything works out, and I think that really aligns with my intentions for this year, which is seeing what happens. Which even that's so unlike previous versions of me, but I'm enjoying it.
I think that's something that I've always been quite lucky with. I think that's something I've always believed, that everything will be all right in some form or the other. And I remember when I packed up my life to quit my decent job in the UK, move away from the great network and friends that I'd built there, to go and live in Malaysia, to work with a bunch of people I didn't know in a country I'd never even been to. And my friends are like, what are you doing? And to me, whatever route I take, I'm going to get to a happy place at some point. And obviously within reason, like I could go and completely sabotage that. But I believe with the intentions that I have and the way that I go about things, they're going to work out in one way or another, whichever route that I take. And I think that's perhaps one of the reasons why I feel so freely and able to move and quit things and leave things and move to somewhere else and start again. Whereas a lot of people don't have that. And I think my friend that said he wouldn't take any part of my life, he definitely doesn't have that. He definitely has a more negative outlook on life than I do. And perhaps instead of thinking, I'm spinning the wheel, what amazing things could happen when I get there, he's thinking, I can see all the ways that this could go wrong. And it's less appealing.
Yeah. And I think there's maybe even a third approach, which I relate to, especially when I was in my early 20s. I would say I was optimistic and I was making big choices, but I was under the impression that things were only okay because I was making them okay. And I had this fear of things going wrong. I was very much, trying to control every situation because I didn't want there to be any uncertainty, and I wanted to really secure that. But where it versus me now, I think a more kind of healthy approach, as you said, it's a knowing, it's a trust, it's a kind of trust in yourself. Yeah.
100%. And you've got that for Australia, right?
I do. Yeah, I do. So I'm feeling like I am trusting myself, and I trust that in the next few months I'm going to make choices that suit me. And I'm really glad, actually, because 2024 was a big year of change for me as well. And I think I'm so happy and I'm so proud that I've made choices that have really served me, and it's kind of confirms it. I think having the more experience you have with kind of showing up for yourself and making choices, the more you can trust yourself. So I think that's me right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going to smash it, whatever you do in Australia.
Thank you.
I have a question. How did you know that this time it was time to leave?
So, okay, if I'm really honest, I think part of it has come from fear, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. I essentially had a bit of a panic about spending my entire 20s in one place. And I think the more I'm trying to understand where that fear has come from is that I'm the type of person that wants to try everything. And I want to be everywhere, and I wanted to try all the things. And I think I had this kind of fear of staying in one place for too long. And that motivated me to explore other routes. And it wasn't always, come to Bali, then come to Australia. It was, at one point it was Canada, at one point it was London, and I had so many different daydreams about where I wanted to go. But I think it was a bit of now that I'm coming to understand myself more, I think I know that I have a tendency to be to act upon fear of staying in one place, and I think it overwhelmed me a little bit. And I think everyone can relate to that feeling of like, oh, another year's gone by, I'm another year older, and I'm doing the same thing. It can be uncomfortable, and it can be very confronting.
100%. For me, that realization, that feeling is something that I get. But for me, the same thing that I'm doing all the time, which I don't want to be doing anymore, is changing everything every year.
Interesting. Yeah.
I find that now I'm in my 30s, it's not as cute to be constantly changing everything all the time, right? When you get a 20-year-old man, it's like, yeah, he's full of potential. He's just working out what he wants to do and where he wants to be. And you get to 30, you're like, okay, you should probably start, taking life a bit more seriously and settling down. And by the time you get to 40, you're like, come on, man.
But even that, hearing that is coming from a place of comparison, totally, because we're comparing to other people, to other benchmarks of people in 20s, 30s, 40s. And I think that can be quite comforting in a way, if it's,
I think so. I think for me, it is driven intrinsically because I know what I want my life to look like.
Yeah.
But my actions aren't actually aligning with that at the moment. So I want to start settling down in one place, building a family, building a network around me. And I wanted to be doing that by this point. But I still haven't found the person. I still haven't found the place. And so it's a case of wanting to find something and having not felt it based on my own personal standards. But 100%, in most cases, it would be from a comparison point of view. And if I'm honest, perhaps my own personal desires are formed from exposure to comparisons in the past. And that's made me want this in the first place.
Yeah. And I think there's definitely such thing as being overexposed to opportunity. And we're so blessed, aren't we, to be in this age where we can actually have anything, but we can't have everything. And I think that is something that I also am trying to remember and take with me, because it's so tempting to want to do everything and to try everything and to be everywhere.
Yeah.
And I think for people that love new experiences and that love change and that go for and that act upon it, I think that's something that's real take home advice, is to remember that we can have anything, but we can't have everything.
That's it. There's a quote that I love, is you can be anything you want, but you can't be everything you want. And
totally.
That's it. You've got to pick, right? But my mum called me out on it about a week or two ago. She said, I'm starting to feel like a butterfly with shiny object syndrome. And I could not even argue. I was like, yeah, I feel it as well. And I think for her, she wants grandkids. She wants a family as well. And one thing about this lifestyle is I think it's very selfish. And I think in today's day and age, we have shifted to a hustle culture, to a mindset of go out there and see how successful you can be. And that's not historically how we grew up. Like, our brains had 300,000 years of everything that we saw was outward looking. It was towards the community. It was, how's the community doing? Oh, my neighbors are looking good. Oh, my family's looking good. Now we're constantly looking at our own profiles on social media. We're looking at how our posts are doing. Everything is about us. And I this isn't my own revelation. This is something that I've learned from listening to someone else, but I can't remember. I've realized that my life is very centered around that. I'm out here trying to be as successful as I can. I'm trying to find what I want. And my family, they want me to be closer to home. They want me to work on expanding the family, which, I want to do. I want to give that to my mum. But you can't have kids just because your mum says she's ready.
Yeah, for sure. And you, just in the same way, you can't do anything because people close to you maybe want that for yourself, for you. That kind of, hearing that makes me think of, when we're thinking about how we're showing up in our lives, and we're thinking about hustle culture and having things to prove, and I think so many people listening will relate to that feeling of pressure and that feeling of needing to achieve things. I think it's such a nice reminder to remember that we're not just those things, and that we're also, I'm not just my career, I'm also a daughter and a sister and a friend. And I think remembering how we're showing up in these areas of our life is crucial, and not having our whole worth and everything put on our career, how much money we're making, how great our Instagram looks. It's, it's very toxic to fall into that trap, but it's so easy to do.
100%. I think we're more susceptible to it, you and I, having moved away from our families and basing ourselves overseas where, you're starting from scratch with new people that you've got to make a certain impression with. Perhaps steers you more towards being or fitting into a box that you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, and being a product of your environment as well. And I think when we're choosing places to move abroad to, for me it was Dubai. I think that is an absolute, it's such a reflection of hustle culture and people trying to achieve so much, and which is great, and I loved being an entrepreneur and building my business a few years ago. But I think I very quickly realized just how much of it was affected from my environment and taking on things that I didn't actually want. I just thought I wanted because of the environment I was in.
So have you walked away from that now?
I've descaled it I've reverted back to being a freelancer essentially. So I started my marketing agency when my freelance career was really taking off, and I was, doing well, and I was enjoying it, and I really was motivated. I was extremely disciplined, but I completely, upon reflection, I know I've taken it too far, and I was working way too hard to the point where I couldn't enjoy my life. And I was really enjoying managing my team and working with great clients in Dubai. But I think I realized that the financial side of it had overtaken what I truly wanted, which was time freedom. And the reason that I left full-time work to work for myself was to be able to set my own schedule and travel when I wanted. And I kind of realized that I was so anxious and overworked that I couldn't enjoy any of that. I was glued to my computer. I was working so hard I couldn't sleep. I was completely so anxious that I couldn't enjoy any of the reward, like the fruits of my labor. So I made the decision to take a step back from that, and it was comforting for me to know that if I wanted to scale it back up again, I can. But now that I'm through that experience, I know that that's not the life I want, and I'm so much happier as a kind of freelancing on my own and not managing a team and not hustling so hard. And I think having my time back has been the biggest blessing and enabled me to get so much more out of my life.
I think it's brave. I think in this day and age, we've got sayings like winners never quit and quitters never win, and everything. It's like, it's about starting something and taking that first step. And quitting is seen as something that it is synonymous with failure. And I don't think that's the case. I think that both quitting and starting something are both big and brave decisions, and knowing when to do what at the right time, they are as important as each other. Because if you have started something but you don't know when to quit, you can run yourself, the company, your relationships into the ground. You could take things too far and not get out at the right time. And obviously if you don't start anything, then you could end up just continuing doing what you are doing for ages. But knowing when to quit is so hard. Are you familiar with Stephen Bartlett?
Yeah.
Have you ever come across his quitting framework?
I don't think I have.
Okay. So his quitting framework, I think, is it's a way to try and simplify something that is too complicated to make sense and be a framework for everyone. But it's some good guidance to get you thinking about why you're actually looking to quit and if it's the right thing to do. And the first thing is like, why are you thinking about quitting? And if you're thinking about quitting because it's too hard and it sucks, then the next question is, okay, is there a way that I can make it suck less? If the answer is no, quit. If the answer is yes, the next question is the effort it will take to make this suck less going to be worth the outcome? If the answer is no, then you quit.
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is yes, then you don't. You put in that graft and you drive for that outcome that's at the end. So it kind of boils down to this old saying, which is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah.
But it's a way of breaking it down step by step so you can work out what it's doing. And there are other tangents to it as well. It's not just because it's too hard. You might be thinking about quitting because it's not working. And then you go down that framework and it's like, okay, could I make it work? Is the effort required to make it work? And so on. And you'll realize when you go through this thought experiment, what it is that's actually driving you to quit, to make sure that you don't make the wrong decisions.
That's really, I think, powerful. And I think thinking about quitting as equally as starting is very refreshing. And I think I would have loved to have heard that when I was going through it, because it was such a difficult, it was terrifying, truly. And I think if anybody is going through that and kind of taking kind of what feels like backward steps, right? It felt like I was cheating on a previous version of me that had put in so much work, and I was so dedicated, and it's what I desperately wanted. And I think anybody that's ever gotten something or achieved something and realized that they didn't actually want that, or it's not quite what they thought it would be, can be really heartbreaking, especially when you put so much of your identity on that version of yourself. And I think that was definitely me, and it was a really difficult time. And I think having a framework probably would have been really helpful. But I think the reality of it was just a long, slow process of me slowly unlearning that I am not just my career. And I think that's why I feel so strongly now that I'm not just this one version of me. I'm also so many other areas of my life that I'm showing up in, and that I actually have the energy to show up in. And it's not just all work. Yeah.
100%. And my mum, again, said something to me to that effect when I was quitting my financial services job. And she said, the reason I had to quit, for context, was because this social media thing was starting to pick up. I wanted to put effort into the podcast as well. And the company was like, no, it's entirely finance. You're not diversifying and doing these other things. And I quit over that. So when I was talking to my mum about it, she said, you've trained for 3 years to do what you're doing. You've worked your ass off to put everything into this. And now because something else has come along that's slightly more appealing and everything, you're thinking of doing that. And I was thinking, I have worked to get where I was, but it wasn't a waste of time. I haven't wasted that because I have learned more about myself. I have shown myself that I'm capable of being more academic than I ever was as a child because I really wanted this. I have gained new skill sets. I've gained new contacts, and I wouldn't have even found this other thing that I wanted to do if I hadn't gone down that route. So it isn't wasted. And it's called, you think of it as like a debt that you owe to yourself, that you have to pay that back, but you don't.
Yeah.
You've spent that time, you've gained those experiences, and it doesn't have to be forever.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's almost too easy to look at time spent in frustration and think, what a waste. But I think it takes some training, but I think to have a mindset that actually says, oh, look at what I learned, look at what I gained, that is such a blessing to be able to do that. But it's hard. I'm working on that still. I'd say. Be. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Don't think so.
Okay, so I get in trouble for quoting him because he can be quite politically diversifying. Okay. But he's a Canadian psychologist, and a lot of what he says is just genius, taking his political viewpoints aside. When he's giving people direction on life, because a lot of young men in particular look to him for guidance when they don't know what they should be doing in life or how to do it, or how to know when quitting or pivoting is the right thing, because we all have that voice in the back of our heads that there's a little bit of quitter in everyone, and we don't want that to be the reason why we're walking away from things. And he says, first of all, just pick something and do it. Because if you don't, you're still going to be where you are now in a year's time or 2 years' time.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
If you pick something and it was the wrong thing,
Yeah.
then you're making your next decision and picking your next thing based on being more experienced and having a better understanding of what you do and don't like. So
Yeah.
that's the first step. And then when it comes to quitting, now this at the time I thought was genius, but it actually contradicts a little bit of what we were just saying about quitting and starting being as equally valuable. He said, if you want to quit something, you can say to yourself, okay, I'll quit, but the next thing that I do has to be more challenging than this.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
Now, in a lot of cases, I think that's going to be very helpful for a lot of young people.
Yeah.
I think having this conversation with you has shown a perfect situation where it isn't good advice.
Yeah, I'd agree. Yeah, I think I'd agree with that. I think I would have found that hearing that when I was going through it, I would have found that very confronting. And also, I think because there was such emotion in it at that point in my life, I think I would have found that quite difficult to hear. But I think now that I've kind of learnt from it and I've moved on from it, I find it quite an intriguing idea, and I think it's interesting. It definitely would have its place in some scenarios.
I think for a lot of people, but again, that's the problem when you try and create frameworks for situations when humans are thousands of different spectrums, all intertwined, and we try and sort of pigeonhole things and create firm guidelines to live by.
Yeah.
But you can't, because you were right to quit because it was too much and it wasn't aligning with who you wanted to be or what you wanted from life. And if you followed that advice where it's already so challenging that it's damaging your life and you think, okay, I've got to do something harder.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a situation where it's not. So,
yeah. I think there's an element of intuition, and I think something that I've been trying to do, and I think this also links back to the spiritual elements of decision making and who we are, is having trust in yourself and using this as an example of a time where I've known when to walk away from something, or I've known deep down that this isn't right. It's just further proof that I know what I'm doing. I can figure this out. So I think that's what having intuition is.
It is. And I think, again, to make an assumption about you and an observation from the outside, I think you've already proven to yourself that you have perseverance and you have grit and you cannot quit, because you've been doing your YouTube for 6 years, right?
Yeah, 6 years.
Exactly. So you have shown to yourself that you're not afraid of keeping working at something where it hasn't been easy. You didn't get anything handed to you. You haven't, been catapulted to anywhere that your hard work didn't get you. And a lot of people wouldn't be able to stick that out for that long.
Yeah, true. Honestly, true. It has been long, and I think it has been a labor of love, as is so much of content creation. But I think I know in myself that I can be extremely hardworking and extremely disciplined when I want to be. But I'm very much enjoying this era of my life where I'm less so, and I'm having time for hobbies. How about doing something for the fun of it? How about doing something for no necessarily gain? And I think I was in the past, I've been so guilty of only viewing things for either the gain or the reward that I'll get from it. But I think it's been so refreshing to do things for the fun of it, for the experience of it, for just because I want to.
Because you've already proven to yourself that you are capable of doing that when you need to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's something that maybe happens when you do achieve something, or you've been working towards something and you achieved it. I've been in positions where I've landed the dream job that I wanted, and then I quit it. And then I, wanted to be a freelancer and travel the world. I did it. And I wanted to be a marketing agency owner, and I did it. And I think it gets to a point where you realize that these achievements aren't the thing that are making you happy. And I think it's really taught me that I'm going to find my happiness in the day to day and in the journey. It does sound a bit cheesy, but it's so true. And I think I'm now, so in love with the life that I have, where I have the energy to do hobbies and things that I love, and even, unpaid work. And I'm doing some volunteer work, and it feels like such a blessing to be able to have room for that in my life, which I would never have been able to do that 2 years ago.
100%. And I think one of the reasons you're feeling so optimistic and positive about this life, which may be more uncertain, it may be less in line with the traditional values of what you want, is because you have experimented with other things and you've got to know yourself better. And one of the things Alex Hormozy has said, and again, very diversifying figure, he says, confidence comes not from saying affirmations to yourself in the mirror. It comes from having an undeniable stack of evidence that you are who you say you are.
Wow, I love that. That's very powerful.
Yeah. And for you, you know you're not a quitter. Like you have chosen to walk away from something at some point, but you haven't got that issue where you think, okay, maybe I can't stick stuff through, because you've proven to yourself that you can. And this further exacerbates my point of when we try and put frameworks on stuff, we try and simplify it more than it should be. Because again, if you take this person of thinking whether they should quit their thing, another one of the factors that these framework doesn't account for is, have you got a tendency to quit things too early? Because I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I am thinking of quitting something, another factor is, okay, you've quit a lot of stuff, Tom. Like I've quit relationships, I've quit countries, I've quit jobs over and over again. So when I'm thinking of quitting something, I will always try and steer more towards the line of sticking it out, because I know I have a tendency to throw in the towel too early and move on to the next shiny object. But then if you take someone who's been in the same job for 15 or 20 years, they should then be having that counterweighting the other way, right? So yeah. You just can't get a framework that accounts for all the variables, because then you're just left with the same mess that people are looking for a framework to get away from. Yeah,
totally. And that's where the self-reflection and the learning about oneself really has its place, I think. And I think it's quite amazing that we can do that. But it's hard.
100%. Have you found living overseas to be lonely?
I have. I think everyone that moves overseas will at some point feel lonely. And I think I'm extremely lucky to be living, when I've been living in Dubai, I have so many people close to me that I love. I have all my closest friends living there with me, which is incredible. But I think loneliness often doesn't come from not being around people. It comes from being the only one to do something. And I think I've felt most lonely when I've been surrounded by my friends that are working a 9 to 5 and I'm not, or I'm deciding to build a business and I feel like the only one. And I think that's more where I've been lonely. And I think that's exaggerated by being in a new place and you have you're overwhelmed, you can be whoever you want to be, but I'd say that's where I felt lonely. I've been lucky in that I've never felt lonely because I have been alone, but it's more been because I keep doing things that no one around me is doing, and my friends have often said to me, you need to go and find some people in your life that are doing the same thing, and maybe I do.
Something interesting that I learned recently on that is oxytocin is the chemical that is responsible for us feeling connected to other humans, and a lack of it therefore is associated with loneliness.
Okay.
And in today's day and age, we are able to get very small amounts of oxytocin through messages from people online or small talk with people at parties, but we lack things that give us massive amounts of oxytocin, like not having your phone around you for 3 hours and having an eye-to-eye conversation with someone will release so much more oxytocin than just hanging out with a friend for an hour, but both of you distracted texting and you're ordering food and everything else, right? And the interesting thing for me was that these small amounts of oxytocin that keep coming, our brain notices we've got it, but we haven't got enough. So it actually creates more of a feeling of deficit to try and make us pursue real oxytocin more.
Wow.
Which is really, really interesting. And I'm no neuroscientist, right? So I probably oversimplified that explanation. But I thought that was so profound as well, because similar to you, I've been in situations where I'm seeing people every day, I'm seeing friends every day, but I felt that lack of connection. And it's because we're getting small amounts of it in the wrong place, and it's making us feel like we need it more. And maybe there's an element of that in your situation as well.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I think it definitely makes me think. I think I'm lucky that I have people in my life that I can have real connection with, and I'm extra lucky that I have those people living in the same city as me. And it's actually that kind of knowing and gratitude that makes me feel nervous for leaving, because I think that's something that does really tie me to Dubai, because I've got those connections there. In fact, I feel like I have more of those connections in Dubai now than I do in the UK. So I think, having that knowledge, that kind of makes me feel a bit nervous about starting again, even though it feels like, I don't know, it's kind of challenging.
Because you're not going to find that in Australia immediately.
Not immediately, no. But then I also know that I have the capacity for that, and that I've built friendships in Dubai from scratch.
Yeah.
And there's people in Dubai that I consider such close friends that, that's not always been the way. So I think, I guess that's my optimistic mind trying to...
Yeah. This is kind of going to lead into another subject that I wanted to talk to you about, which was about being genuine and vulnerable online.
Yeah.
But one thing that I think is good for us to raise is people love, especially people living in Dubai, to show the glitz and the glamour of the lifestyle and avoid posting themselves on social media when they're feeling like shit, or sharing those side of things. And it's not limited to Dubai, but I just know that is very much a place where you have to be putting on your best.
It's a perfect example of it, isn't it? I think, yeah.
And when I was moving to Malaysia, having been through this, I think Malaysia was the 9th country I've lived in. I knew when I was going there that the first 3 to 6 months were going to suck. When I was going, I was under no illusion. And I would say to my friends that I know it's going to be rough at first, because I was going to not immediately just make the best friends ever and be able to have the deep and vulnerable conversations that I had at home. I knew that it was going to take me time to build a network, to find clients, to get accustomed and feel at home in the city, right? And when I got there, I remember one night I was like 3 months in, and I was just feeling like, okay, I still haven't made those deep connections. I still was hoping business would be going better than it was. And I was sat there and I was like, this sucks. And I had to remind myself, this is what hard feels like. You knew it was going to be hard, and now you're experiencing the hard, because those words that you said, like, they had a truth behind them, and now you've got to experience that truth. And for anyone that's listening that is thinking of moving to a new place, you'll all have friends that have moved to Australia and post the most amazing beaches and everything on there, and it will look like the best time ever. But life is life no matter where you are in the world. And that's something that I've learned as well, is it's new and exciting, but then you still have to go to work. You still have to clean the dishes. You still have to do everything else, and it becomes life anywhere. And there are going to be those hard moments wherever you are in the world. And these people that are posting the best time of their life online, I'm not saying they're not having it, but you're not seeing the loneliness. You're not seeing the fact that, they've met a new friend that's then left to go to the next town, and they were thinking, okay, this could have been that friend. You're not seeing the fact that they are going to sleep at night wishing that they had someone to talk to about some stuff, but all of their friends are asleep because they're in a different time zone. And that happens.
It does happen. I've relate to a lot of that. I think something I felt being a content creator for a long time, a few years ago, I did unfortunately feel the pressure that I had to look like I had everything together. I really felt that. I think I wouldn't let myself be anything less than, I'm having a great time here in Dubai, everything's fine, and I'm loving running my business, and I'm loving everything. And I think I would never let anyone know that I was having a hard time. And I think that terrified me, actually. So I think learning to be vulnerable was extremely hard. And I think, it really reminds me, there's a real turning point that I remember. And so I'm the eldest of 3. I have 2 younger sisters. And I think a time where I opened up to my younger sister and said, I'm actually finding it really hard. And immediately was met with so much love and support. It made me think, oh, I could have been doing this the whole time, and I could have had somebody here helping me through the whole time. And remembering that I don't have to always be the strong one, and that I don't always have to be the one that has it together, and I don't have to be the one that's heading the team and got it all figured out. And I think the offline and the online, it's so closely connected. And I think people actually really appreciate to know when you might be finding something difficult in your life and you might be struggling. And so often it allows so much connection and support that's right there if you need it. So yeah, that was a major, I think, learning for me. Yeah.
It's great that you're leading the way with that and showing that vulnerability online. I know there are some content creators out there that also do that. But like for me, a lot of the people that I idolized and tried to be like, they don't show vulnerability online. And one of them, I quoted earlier, Alex Hormozy, and from his description, he has the greatest work ethic of any man in life. Like his friends say to him, why don't you have hobbies? He's like, I love working so much. Why would I need hobbies? You know, he starts every day by putting himself in a room with no windows, with earplugs in, chewing a nicotine patch to just lock in and do like 5 hours work straight away every morning. And then he'll end up doing 14-hour work days every day throughout it. And I was listening to him and I felt inspired and motivated. And I was like, yes, I'm going to build my businesses. I'm going to go and hustle. But then when I wasn't able to do that, and I was falling short of those unrealistic and probably untrue expectations, I found myself feeling inadequate. I found myself beating myself up about it. Because when we don't fulfill our own expectations of ourselves, there's blamers and there's shamers, which is, again, this isn't my framework, this is someone else's. And the blamers are people like, it's because of, you know, these notifications that kept going off, or it's because, you know, I had to do this that day and I had to do that the other day, when really it's just yourself and your management and your prioritization. And the other side of the coin is the shamers, which I realized I fit into the camp where every morning I was like, you can't even do 6 hours work today. Like, you lazy piece of shit. And when you speak to yourself like that, what I was saying earlier about your brain rebuts. It's like, okay, well, I'm not, why would I do this? And then you look for the distractions that take yourself away from the internal pain and turmoil that you're causing yourself for doing it. And all of that spirals from having an unrealistic expectation of life set by people that you follow online. If life is perfect all the time for them, and then why isn't my life perfect? But it's not.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's so important, and we really have a responsibility as creators, and not just, you know, whether you have a podcast or you don't. I think this is anybody posting online, that we really need to be authentic, and and people need authenticity, and they need vulnerability, because otherwise what a toxic and, you know, awful comparison to have for your life.
100%.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what you're doing on that front.
Thank you.
I love that you're doing it. And I do believe as well that there is actually becoming a bit more of an appreciative shift towards it, which is good, because there's people, do you know Sam Sulek?
No.
So he's some absolute roid head gym guy. He's absolutely massive. But he has started posting like video logs in the form of long form content where he just talks about his day, and he posts like a 1 to 2 hour video every day. It's literally just him filming his life, being genuine about what's going on. And he's one of the most viral people on the internet at the moment. He's got millions of followers in the space of a year. And there's lots of appreciation coming back for that, because we spend so much time watching this short form, clickbaity, intense TikTok algorithm stuff, that when we actually see something that stands out from that crowd and we're like, okay, no, this is actually something I can relate to, and something that makes me feel seen, makes me feel, you know, not like an outcast anymore, like not like the only one in the world that doesn't have problems. They are resonating with it. And I think that if you keep doing what you're doing, then you're going to have a genuine and thoughtful and engaged fan base that feel like they can relate to you, and you'll be making a positive impact on the world by, you know, showing people that everyone has problems.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what I really want to do. And I think the more I've shown up, maybe vulnerable, maybe, trying to be my authentic self, and the more I've done that, the more it's been received so well. And it's honestly an amazing feeling to have support and to have community, not just from people that watch me on YouTube, but from friends of friends and from acquaintances, and to have people reach out and say, I related to that, or I resonated with that. It's amazing, and I think it's that connection that we kind of all need.
100%.
Yeah.
And the connection there is genuine as well, because they were connecting to you, giving an authentic representation of yourself. Whereas if they connect to you and say, oh, I loved your post, like it looks like everything's going so well, and it's not, then you're going to create that feeling of dissonance between reality and, what you're putting online.
100%. And fighting that dissonance has been quite challenging, and it does go against the grain a little bit. And I think as a creator, I'm still trying to, make sure I'm only posting brands that I believe in, and really thinking about, does this actually align with what I believe in? It is a challenge, but it's something that I'm completely committed to.
And keep it up. If people want to check out your work and keep up with your work, and they go,
you can find me at Mabel Goulden, MabelGoulden, and on YouTube. I'll be posting all my adventures of Australia in the coming weeks, which I'm very excited about.
Perfect. So anyone who's taken an interest in Dubai, there is loads of content there for you. And anyone who's got an interest in Australia, there is loads of content to come. I will put both links in the description. And Mabel, thank you so much for coming on. You're an amazing speaker, an amazing guest, and an amazing representative of real life, which I love.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.